Hi, my name is Karen Alexandra Nogues, and I'm a sophomore here in Courier House. Today I'm here with Elizabeth Ross, the Faculty Dean of Courier House, and I have several questions for her. So let's get started.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. This is a really wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm British and I have a background in laboratory science. I have a PhD in immunology and we moved to the States about 34 years ago. And I've been working in Africa since 1981. On and off, and in Uganda for the last almost 30 years. And for the last 20 years, I've been the director of a project that works with schools around a national park in Uganda, and we're really concerned with conservation, but through programs that support health and education and care for the environment in schools that border the national park.
Wow, that's so interesting. I'd like to ask you, as one of these segue questions, and actually because this is so important to the theme of this interview, being joyful at Harvard, I want to ask you a question. The question is, what brings you joy? You mentioned so many items, so many activities that you're involved with. I'd just like to hear from your perspective, what really brings you joy?
I think apart from the obvious things like family and friends and those kind of things that keep me busy, so that are intellectually stimulating and actually speak to what I consider my skills are. And I think, of course, that because of the work I do, which is supporting people who are in some kind of need or other. I mean, I think all of us feel joy from feeling that we're actually making an impact in other people's lives in a positive way.
Wow. And what motivates or sustains you to do the work that you're doing?
Um, that's a difficult one. I think some of it is selfish. You know, that it's something that I'm good at. It's probably the first thing in my life that I've ever been really good at, and it's been very successful, the project. And I've got a huge amount of pleasure out of learning about becoming so involved in another culture.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I knew very much about it even after 20 years, but I know the people that I work with, and seeing the changes in their lives has been amazingly fulfilling. And then, I think that's the wonderful thing about education projects, because it actually doesn't matter that much how long they last, because for those people you impact in that time frame that you're working in education, it changes their lives forever. And we have one of our students here in Courier who's he's graduating this summer, and he's clearly our star pupil, but from our scholarship program, we've had about 140 kids go through our scholarship program, and they've most of them, we have quite a low dropout rate, so most of them are now have done degrees or vocational training, and you just see the huge impact that has not only on them but also on their families, because the culture is that you make some money, you help your family, so then you put your younger brothers and sisters and nephews and nieces and things through school as well. So that's been hugely fulfilling.
And how did you decide to focus in Africa?
Well, Richard.
Richard, okay.
So Richard works on chimps. I mean, his research is on chimps. And when I met him, he was at Cambridge doing a fellowship. And we had the opportunity to go to the Congo for a year. After we got married, yes.
Oh, wow.
Through a Harvard project which was studying pygmies. And the two of the people who were going dropped out, and we had the opportunity to go instead. And I'd been to Aden, but that was it with Africa. I had never been to Africa before, and it was just the most incredible experience. We lived in 2 days' drive from the nearest town. We got an average of 3 or 4 vehicles up our road a month. I mean, it was really isolated and incredibly beautiful. And what we were doing was working with the local village people, the local agricultural people, and we got very much involved in their lives, and it was just an amazing experience. And so then after that, we had a couple of kids, and then Richard got involved in the chimp project in Uganda. So then we went back.
Uganda.
Yeah.
So you were in Congo, and then you moved back to the U.S., and then
Yeah.
you went back
And then-
to Uganda.
Yes, so
at some point. Okay.
Richard's has been working on this chimp project
Yeah.
in Kibale National Park in Western Uganda for 30 years now.
What does this project involve?
More than 30. 30 years? Yeah, 30 years.
Really?
He studies the behavioral ecology of chimpanzees,
Wow.
and so they have a habituated group there that they've been studying for, I think, 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'd like to ask if there's a particular incident in your life in which you thought, maybe I want to go into this work, or you started touching on it when you talked about your experience in the Congo for a year. I mean, was there a particular incident or a time you can recall where you decided, this is what I want to do? This is for me.
I don't think so. I mean, I just loved being in Africa, and I
Yeah.
think that anyone who hasn't been there already, I feel a little envious of them, because I think the first impact is just incredible.
The vast impact.
Yeah,
Huh, that's interesting.
it's just beautiful. It's wonderful, and I just love that. And then I was an army brat. My father was in the army, so
Oh, wow.
I was born in Malaysia, and I travelled a lot as a child. So I think that sort of was the norm. So
Yeah.
I always wanted to go on to the next
into
place.
the next place. Yeah. Travel.
And I think that the thing that I really came away from the Congo with was that everybody is the same. And
Yeah.
that sounds stupid, because obviously everybody is the same, but I think you can kind of intellectually know that people who think have no education kind of think that you live just over the hill and
Yeah.
never seen an airplane, or that somehow that would the lack of education and experience would make them somehow different.
That's true.
But they're not. So the things that
Everyone is the same.
everyone is the same,
Same.
and we laugh. The things we laughed at were the same. The things that the same jokes, the same.
Do you remember a joke you laughed at, or?
No, but they clearly found other people's misfortune extremely funny, and I think most of us do if someone falls over or whatever. But we're kind of taught not to express that, right?
That, yeah.
And of course their concerns were the same as ours. Is there enough food to eat? Are our kids going to get educated?
Yeah.
Can we get to the doctor? Do I hate my mother-in-law? It was all
Okay.
very similar. So I came back from that experience with, I think, a very different, a more internalized understanding of although we have different beliefs and different knowledge, we're very much the same. So then, going to Uganda, a friend of mine who taught in one of these schools, after
Yeah.
we'd been there for about 8 or 9 years, said, you have to come and see the school I work in, and it was just terrible. I mean,
Really?
part of it had fallen down. It's an earthquake zone, so you get these tremors.
What age level? Is it primary school?
It's
or
primary school.
Primary school.
We
okay.
work only in primary schools.
Oh, only in primary
and
schools.
only in government primary schools. They're all public
really?
schools.
Oh, that's interesting.
And she said this this building is condemned, and we have to evacuate the children when the wind blows in case
Yeah.
it falls on them.
Oh, wow.
And we said, oh gosh, well, we can build a classroom. And my sister-in-law and her husband were there as well, and they said, yeah, we can build a classroom.
Wow.
So that's how it started. And
Oh, that's interesting.
we had the people that worked with us had children that were going to these schools, and then we were very concerned about conservation, and a Ugandan friend of ours said, well, what are these kids going to do? Their
Yeah.
schools are absolutely appalling. They're going to drop out, or they're going to stay here, and then what are they going to do? They're going to farm progressively smaller and less fertile patches of land, and then when things get tough, they're going to turn to the forest for firewood, for meat, for poles to build with.
Yeah.
They're going to cut down trees. And he said, if you want to try and help with the conservation, you need to make the schools better. So that's what we did. And we started with one school,
Yeah.
and we now have 14 in our program.
14 schools.
Yes, and
Oh,
they're all
wow.
we don't deal with private schools at all. They're all public
No,
schools.
I mean, they're all public
Yeah.
schools. And so the age is sort of primary age.
Yeah, so
Primary
that
school.
sounds young, but
Yeah.
actually many kids in Uganda don't graduate primary school till they're 14 or 15.
Wow. So it encompasses a pretty wide range
Yes, it does.
of students. Okay.
A little less so now. Originally, when we first went there, you had to pay for primary school,
Yeah.
but then they introduced free primary education, which had its own problems because the schools just ballooned with no extra resources.
Oh, wow.
But they often they're older. They keep them back if they don't
Yeah.
do well, or they have to drop out for some reason or another to look after a sick parent, or someone dies, or
Yeah.
so they tend to be probably on average when they graduate primary school, 13 and a half.
Oh, 13 and a half.
Yeah, that sort of age.
And so you teach them conservation in the classroom? Is it local teachers that are teaching the material?
Yes,
or?
no, we don't. I mean,
Okay.
actually, so most of the work that we do is we don't want to interfere with the school day.
Yeah.
And so most of what we do is after school.
Oh, that's
So we do
Huh.
everything we say that makes a primary school better.
Yeah.
And that's everything from construction. So we build classrooms, libraries, latrines, kitchens,
Yeah.
dormitories, preschools, that kind of thing. And then we do a lot of training, so teacher training, and providing money so that teachers can upgrade their qualifications. And then we do sort of more intense academic stuff on the literacy side.
Yeah.
And then we have the scholarship program. I mean, you know, we have soccer and Girl Scouts
Wow.
and, you know, whatever.
Oh,
We do
Girl
everything.
Scout. Wow. Yeah.
But the conservation education part of it is based in our school wildlife clubs.
Yeah.
All schools have wildlife clubs and a teacher who's assigned to be a patron at that wildlife club. And so you're not adding something into the school that isn't already there, which is seen as extra work, and that's not
Okay.
good.
That's interesting.
Many of the wildlife clubs are completely defunct and not working,
Yeah.
but at least you're working with something that is already there. And then what we said was, if you would like us to, we can help make your wildlife clubs more exciting for your kids.
Oh, that's nice.
And
yeah.
so that we run and they're all after school or at the weekend.
So what does the time frame look like for that? The students are at the school day be 8. Is it 8 to 3,
Yes,
and then
no,
thereafter
it's 8 to 4.
8 to 4 for
Yeah.
regular school day.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so
And they stay after school for.
they do. I can't remember exactly when they get out. But,
Okay.
then
are
they
these
might
like
stay
2
for an
hour-
hour or
an hour or two.
Yeah,
Okay.
because then they have to walk home, and it's the tropics, so it gets dark early. You know,
okay,
it's,
exactly.
It's dark by 7 or 6, and,
Yeah.
and then it's tough because then they have all these chores to do at home as well,
Wow.
and no electricity or water.
That's no. Yeah.
Right.
Wow. I'd like you to ask, like, so far, I mean, if you could give advice, I mean, this is really important to us as students, I mean, myself as a sophomore and for college students here, I mean, if you could give advice to your younger self related to your current life's work or what has inspired you, do you think you would have advice you'd like to give to students in the college as we start to think of the career paths we pursue?
Well, I think I would say that life changes,
Yeah.
and I think one's perception of what you're good at changes.
Okay.
And I was a laboratory scientist, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed it very much, but it wasn't what I was really good at. I don't have the I think for research you need imagination, and I didn't have a lot of I don't have a lot of imagination. So if I could go back, I would take a different course, because clearly what I'm good at is administering things. And writing grants and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So, but I didn't know that then, and I didn't find it out until I actually had to do it through this project in Uganda. And
Yeah.
then, I realized that actually, this is what I'm good at. So I
Yeah.
think I would say you keep searching for and trying lots of new things, because you never know what it is that you're going to find that that fits you.
It fits you.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I would say is one of the things that kind of frightened me a little when I was younger was writing. And I guess there are really good writers, and obviously there are people who are really talented at
Yeah.
writing, but mostly it's practice.
That's true.
And that's one thing I've learned from writing reports and grants and just endless stuff. You learn how to write well by practicing. So maybe everything in life is like that. You
Yeah.
keep practicing at it, and you stay open to opportunities that may not ever have occurred to you, and you may find that that's your slot.
That's interesting. It's not about necessarily deciding what you think you're good at now and then maybe
No.
just sticking with that. It's also
Right.
about exploration.
Yes.
That's so important, because I think that even for us here at Harvard, I think so often when we're choosing a concentration, the temptation is to just see, what have I been good at so far in my life, and then choose that path and stick with that and ignore maybe the rest. But it's really about, it's not necessarily that. It's really about thinking about, what do I want to do with my life? How can I explore more here, use opportunities here, and not just think about what have I been good at until now.
Right, because I was good at
Yeah.
science. That's
Yeah,
all I
yeah.
wanted to do from the time I was 12. And so that's what I did, and then I as one does as a student, you know, you go to university and then you get pulled into graduate work because that's the next
The
step.
next step.
And
Yeah.
things are a lot more flexible for you now, so you can take a couple of years off and try something else and then go back to graduate school. The British system is very rigid,
Yeah.
and it was particularly rigid then, so if I had dropped out for a year to do something else, it would have been hard to go back to graduate school.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I thought very clearly about what I was doing. I would, you know, suggest now that people take time to try other things and think about it.
Yeah.
I think that doing a PhD stood me in really good stead for what I do now, because I can do statistics, I know how to design experiments, so the way that we run our project is we do lots of evaluations and we think carefully about the evaluations so that we know what the results of what we're doing are, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. So I'm not saying that experience hasn't really helped me with what I do now, but it probably wasn't the ideal job for me.
Yeah. And do you think your background in science, like as early on your background in science, do you think that influenced the work you're doing now? I mean, even indirectly, because I would say that for myself, I'm a neurobio concentrator, but I find that when I take a humanities class, I feel like my background in neurobio, maybe it's my approach to thinking from the sciences, actually somehow helps me to think even more critically in the humanities. Would you say that there are ways in which your early background in sciences might have actually influenced the work
Yes,
you're doing now?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you asked me what I like about it.
Yeah.
I like the data.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoy the evaluations, I enjoy playing with the data, I enjoy doing the statistics, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's been really useful because going into this as a scientist, we took data right from the word go. And
Wow.
many of these projects, people don't collect information
That's
very
true.
well.
Yeah.
And so we can go back 20 years and we can tell you exactly how the schools were doing 20 years ago, and we repeat the same evaluations every 5 or 6 years to see. And so it's been really helpful from the point of view of making our project attractive to donors.
This idea of testing rigorously. Yeah.
That we're rigorous about the way that we approach. And it's not always that easy, because in education so many factors are impacting, for instance, how a class does in their exams.
Yeah.
And there are multiple variables, but we can say they're getting better.
And how have you managed to involve the community in Uganda with the work you're doing?
So I think our experience with the parents, for instance, is that they're a little like my parents were at school. They didn't really get involved. They don't get involved in the schools very much. Yeah. So, when my children were young, I would go into the classes and I would go to meetings and I'd go and help with the computers or whatever it was that they needed. My mother went to the parent-teacher meeting once a year and maybe to a ballet performance or something, but they didn't really get involved in the same way that parents do now.
Yeah.
And Ugandan parents are very much the same. They have this culture that the schools know what they're doing and they don't get involved. So we've been trying to, we run a lot of different programs and the kids do lots of different things. So one of the things that we're trying to do is help the schools, introduce a culture of parent days. I mean, they kind of do them.
Days. Oh yeah,
But
I remember
often,
those in elementary school. We have the mom comes in for one day or something.
Or just an open day.
An open okay.
And they do those. They call parents in for meetings, but usually it's to ask them for money for something. And so that makes the parents a little wary.
Yeah.
So, what we do is, there are two things that we do. We send out questionnaires with the children to the schools, to the parents, and we ask them, their opinion of what we're doing, what they would like us to do more of, how they would like us to change. And we do that on a fairly regular basis.
Wow.
So, and we incorporate
That's really cool.
their what they think into the way that we design our programs.
Wow.
And then we run these open days. When I say we run them, we've done it once. We're opening that kind of up.
Is it at the beginning of the school year or?
I don't know actually. Probably this year. Because of the election, all the timing got changed.
Okay.
But probably it'll be the beginning of next year.
Beginning of next year.
And then we do things like we do competitions. We do debate competitions. They do music, dance, and drama competitions and sports competitions. And then anybody who wants to come to those can come to those.
Yeah.
and then all our staff is Ugandan, so we have expatriate volunteers, but the actual staff that runs the projects are Ugandan, and they're linked into the local community as well. And sometimes they'll take what we're doing into their churches, and I mean, we would like to be more in the community, but it's a limit to what you can do, and we don't do community stuff. We have a project farm, and that links us into the community because we provide agricultural outreach and that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It's very hard not to have mission creep.
Yeah.
We're a bit stretched very thin.
And I'd like to ask you, this is also, and this question I know is a difficult one, but we'd still like to have your opinion on this. When I say the word success, what comes to mind?
Well, clearly it's not economic success, because everything we do is voluntary.
Yeah.
So for some people, that's a measure of success, is how much money you make.
Yeah.
I think feeling like you've led a good and fulfilling life, and it's, you're at the beginning of yours, and I'm moving towards the end of mine, and when I look back on my life, there are lots of things I wish I hadn't done, and there are times when it wasn't that great, but on the whole, I think I feel that I have contributed.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, that makes me feel successful, and I'm good at writing grants.
Yeah. And before we end, I'd like to just ask, when you thought about, how did you come to the decision to become faculty dean of Courier House? What motivated that decision? So,
our children the last of our kids had gone to college.
Yeah.
And we had a house that was too big for us, and we wanted to downsize and think about other things. And David Pilbeam, who was the acting dean of the college, works with Richard, and they were talking one day, and he said, "So what's going on in your life?" And Richard said, "Well, we're at this point, we think we're going to sell the house and move into something smaller, and, we're sort of thinking about post-children life." And David said, "Have you ever thought about becoming," was then housemasters? And I think once, much earlier, Richard had been approached about doing this, but he had, our children were at school, and it was just too complicated. And so we said, "Well, no, but actually that sounds really interesting." And one of the things that was really, we were looking for something new, and also something to do together, which was a real attraction, that this was something that we could do together, because children tend to, it's a busy time when you have children, and you don't spend a lot of time together. So, and it just seemed like neither of us actually knew very much about it. So it was a bit like, jumping in the deep end. But we knew that we were really interested in the students, and we knew that it was going to be very fulfilling and fun to be with a lot of young people who are really terrific, and it has been. It's been terrific. Yeah.
And what have you found most fulfilling about
being a faculty dean?
Being faculty dean?
Well, I think some of the bit that speaks to my sort of organising bossy side.
Yeah.
I like the organisational aspects. So a lot of that is the parts that the house doesn't see. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that the students don't see. You would see it if it didn't happen, because things wouldn't run, right?
Sure.
So I think I've enjoyed that. I've really liked being part of a community. I've loved working with Patricia, and we've had terrific tutors, and being part of a team has been very satisfying. And then getting to know the students has been just wonderful. It's just been... And then, you asked about success. In not many cases, but there have been a few cases where I've been able to help students think about what they want to do next, and provide them with opportunities and references and that kind of thing. So that's been nice too.
Yeah.
That's been great. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I guess I would just say I would just repeat again that life is, has its ups and downs, but is mostly pretty exciting. And I think, there are things that I would do now that I would never have done at your age, because I was too nervous. I didn't have the confidence. I don't know, I didn't know what I was doing, and I felt embarrassed about making an idiot of myself. And I think that I know that's natural to feel like that, but I wish now, looking back, that I hadn't been quite so self-conscious about a lot of stuff, because actually it doesn't matter if you make an idiot of yourself. People are far too tied up in how they're feeling about themselves to notice.
I heard that before too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.